Hello students, this is a class for BA Part 2 and we are doing Macbeth, the play by William Shakespeare, and we are continuing with the introduction to the summary of this play. We enter now in Act 3, scene first, and then we will do scene second also in this lecture. Actually, Act 3 begins with a soliloquy by Banquo. Banquo thinks of how all the prophecies of the witches have already been fulfilled, insofar as they are related to Macbeth, and now he hopes that their prophecies relating to him, that is to say, with Banquo, will also be fulfilled. Macbeth, who has now become the King of Scotland, is now announced. He accompanies Lady Macbeth and Lennox and Ross, these are two noblemen in the scene. King and the Queen are now to hold a royal feast, a dinner in the night, and most of the noblemen, including Banquo, are invited into it. Macbeth makes a request to Banquo to attend the banquet. Banquo promises to comply with the king's command, as Banquo is at that particular moment some other appointment. Therefore, he makes an excuse and he says that he will be back by the time the dinner is set, and he is going somewhere on that appointment with his son Fleance. Macbeth, when Banquo leaves the scene, Macbeth starts thinking. He asks all his noblemen and attendants that he wishes to be alone till the time of dinner. And he speaks to himself, that is to say, he speaks a soliloquy in which he expresses his apprehensions, his fears regarding Banquo. He recognizes the superior virtues of Banquo's character, but what troubles him most is the prophecy of the witches that his throne will pass not to the descendants of Macbeth but to the sons of Banquo. It will go to Banquo's sons. This means that Macbeth has committed the murder of King Duncan only to make the throne safe for Banquo's children. Macbeth therefore starts thinking to kill Banquo and his son. To give effect to this secret purpose, he calls to murderers. He calls to murderers so that they can kill Banquo and Fleance. In this meeting, and these two murderers are not given any name, but in this scene, Macbeth reminds them of the injustice that has been done to them by Banquo, and he instigates them that they should kill Banquo. He urges them to take their revenge upon him, and as he is the king, he will take care of them. He will reward them. The two murderers promise to carry out Macbeth's bidding and to kill Banquo and his son Fleance both. In this particular scene, we can say that the soliloquy by Banquo is also very important, because in this soliloquy he is also not unaffected by the prophecy of witches. He is also secretly thinking that his sons will become the King of Scotland one day. And in this manner, there is a taint of ambition in Banquo also, we see that he feels happy if he can find a way to establish this dynasty. Macbeth's conversation with Banquo and later with the two murderers shows that he has already become a seasoned intriguer who can go to the extent of murder. From Banquo, he tactfully obtains this information regarding their movement during the day so that he can pass on this information to the murderers. And his conversation with the murderers show how skilled he has become in working upon the people's grievances and using those people for his own purpose. He convincingly explains to the murderers why he himself cannot give a command for the execution of Banquo, a command which is not difficult by virtue of his authority to give. He also explains to them why he wants the son to be killed along with the father. Thus, we observe a marked development in the character of Macbeth. He is not the same simple minded person whom we are accustomed to. He has become a great intriguer by this time. We also come to know in this scene that Macbeth is morally inferior to Banquo. He is not as high on moral level as Banquo. His soliloquy reveals the working of his mind, that he feels uncomfortable in the company of Banquo, and witch's prophecy relating to Banquo disturbs him. In this soliloquy, Macbeth admits his own moral inferiority to Banquo when he says that in Banquo's presence he feels his better nature rebuked, just as Antony felt his better nature rebuked in the company of Julius Caesar. And this play is also very important from the point of view of building suspense. This scene also builds up an atmosphere of suspense because our curiosity is now aroused as to what course of action this plot will take, with the murderers having been commissioned to do away with the lives of Banquo as well as his son Fleance. Now we enter into scene second of Act 3. Here we meet Lady Macbeth in a brief soliloquy. She expresses her disillusionment after having become the queen through the assassination of King Duncan. Although her desire to be seeing her husband as the King of Scotland has been fulfilled, yet she does not have peace of mind. Then Macbeth appears on the scene with a troubled look on his face. Lady Macbeth immediately picks up this mood of Macbeth. She asks him why he spends so much time alone and why he allows his mind to be occupied with troublesome thoughts. She points out that what is done and that he should pay no attention to the things which are past, which are already gone. No remedy will come out of them. Macbeth tells her that there is still the danger awaiting them, both in the shape of Banquo and his son Fleance. It is better for them to be dead like Duncan than to be alive and suffer the kind of mental torture which he is experiencing. Lady Macbeth urges him to stop thinking of danger and to get ready for the banquet. Macbeth says that his mind is full of scorpions and he will remain so as long as Banquo and Fleance are alive. He then hints at the secret plot that he has hatched against Banquo and his son, though he does not fully take her into confidence in this matter. He next calls upon the night to extinguish the light of the day and to put an end to the lives of Banquo and Fleance with its bloody and inevitable end. This scene has a great psychological value And you can say this is one of the most important scenes from psychological point of view. So far as the development of the plot of the drama is concerned, this scene hardly matters. Its significance lies in its portrayal of the states of the minds of the two major characters, namely Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Both Lady Macbeth and Macbeth are feeling tortured by the sense of danger and guilt which afflicts them. It is noteworthy, however, that Lady Macbeth tries to overcome her own apprehensions in order to offer consolation and comfort to her husband, whose misery is much greater than her misery. As she can clearly see it, it is noteworthy also that although Macbeth does not take her into full confidence, so far as his mental torture is concerned, he does not reveal to her the plot which he has hatched for the murder of Banquo and Fleance. His withholding this secret from Lady Macbeth is a sign of his drifting away from his own wife. We also come across Macbeth's poetic nature in this scene. The speeches of Macbeth in this scene further confirm the impression which we have already formed about his exceptional ability to express his thoughts in a language which is powerful and very poetic and vivid. His imaginative power and his power of expression are highly commendable. He is indeed the soul of a poet, even though the ambition which has forced him to follow the path of evil is deplorable, bad, and criticizable. Some of the lines that he speaks in this scene are worthy to be quoted, and I would like to quote before you these lines so that you can know their poetic significance. The first quotation is, "We have scourged the snake, not killed it. She will close and be herself, whilst our poor Malice remains in danger of her former tooth." See, he is talking about Banquo and his son. And then I'll quote the second quotation. "Duncan is in his grave. After life's fitful fever, he sleeps well." Just see how Macbeth appreciates the peace of death for Duncan. He is no more, he is killed, he is lying in his grave, and Macbeth, while living, feels tortured, whereas Duncan, who is killed, is in eternal peace in his mind. This is very poetic imagination that you can see. I quote once more, "Good things of day begin to droop and drowse, whilst night's black agents to their praise do rouse." Here, the line, "Good things of the day begin to droop and drowse," has been regarded by critics as the motto of the entire play. Now you can see Macbeth's heinous nature. He will start killing other characters so that his throne is safe, secure. So we come to the end of scene second of Act 3, and that is all for today. Thank you very much.